gull stole Inez Caldera's sketchbook straight from her hands, and suddenly her whole life was flapping above Valparaíso like a taunt. In the half-abandoned salt warehouses, she spent her days preserving fluorescent safety tape that clung to cracked pillars like tired neon veins. It was precise, lonely work, the kind that taught her how fragile color becomes when dust, wind, and neglect keep winning. At night, she filled one battered sketchbook with faces, staircases, harbor fog, and the private ache she never said aloud. That book was not a hobby to her. It was the only place her life looked organized. Then one sharp afternoon, a gull swooped through the loading dock, snatched the book, and rose over the cliffside houses. Inez ran hard past rusted rails and fish crates, watching blank pages flash white between the bird's wings like little surrender flags. She chased it through stairways painted in peeling turquoise, laundry lines snapping overhead, and walls tattooed with old storms and political ghosts. By the time the gull vanished beyond a row of collapsing balconies, her breath was wrecked, her knees shook, and her center was gone. Losing the sketchbook hurt because it held more than drawings. It held proof she had been paying attention to her own life. Without it, every unfinished idea felt erased, and every quiet sacrifice she had made suddenly looked invisible, even to herself. She went back to the warehouse, stared at fluorescent tape glowing against salt-eaten concrete, and realized preservation had become easier than expression. She could save other people's warning marks, yet she had no system for saving her own voice when disaster showed up ridiculous and feathered. So she made one rule that night beneath a swinging bulb and the mineral smell of brine: draw before doubt catches up. She grabbed the back of a grocery receipt and sketched the gull's wing from memory before the image could slip away. The next morning, she drew on a bus transfer while climbing the city's endless steps, using the jolts between landings like a metronome. At lunch, she traced harbor cranes onto a bakery wrapper, smudging sugar into the shadows until steel looked almost tender. When she had no paper, she used the fogged stairwell windows of old buildings, sketching with one fingertip before the glass cleared itself. She drew on peeled paint, on cardboard torn from shipping boxes, on the blank margins of invoices abandoned in warehouse drawers. Her new practice was messy, public, and impossible to perfect, which is exactly why it kept surviving. Instead of waiting for the right page, she started honoring the nearest surface before fear could call it unworthy. That strategy changed her more than inspiration ever had, because action shrank the distance between seeing and making. Soon the city carried her fragments everywhere, little drawings left behind like breadcrumbs for a version of herself she had misplaced. A child found a receipt sketch tucked under a market crate and taped it to a doorway scarred by floodwater. A bus driver noticed her window drawing of bent umbrellas in the rain and refused to wipe that section clean until sunset. A widow living near the cliffs preserved one of Inez's paint chip sketches behind glass because it captured her building's exhaustion perfectly. Without planning it, Inez was making art that belonged to the city before it ever belonged to her. Each fragment answered the loss of the sketchbook with a daring idea. Maybe identity was not a container, but a trail. As she walked farther, she noticed what people usually edited out when painting Valparaíso for postcards and tourists. She drew boarded pharmacies, empty fishing boots, stair rails polished by worried hands, and curtains glowing over apartments where someone had recently left. Yet she also drew rooftop gardens in cracked buckets, grandmothers braiding each other's hair, and cats sleeping on warm electrical boxes. Grief and hope kept sharing the same walls, the same alleys, the same chipped blue doors. Because her surfaces were temporary, she stopped pretending every drawing needed to be final and started making each one honest. That is a practical lesson her life carved into her. Use small available materials so perfection loses its throne. Another lesson arrived with equal force. Document what is real around you, not only what would look impressive from far away. As her scattered images multiplied, neighbors began recognizing recurring symbols across districts, as if separate corners were secretly speaking to each other. A missing fisherman's red glove appeared in one sketch, then again beside a stairwell vine, then again near a closed cannery gate. A line of bright tape, borrowed from her warehouse repairs, threaded through several pieces like a pulse, joining broken places. Mothers pointed out drawings of cracked cisterns and unfinished memorial walls, then added stories about shortages, fires, and sons who never returned. Teenagers photographed her bus window sketches before condensation vanished, posting them as clues to corners adults rarely admitted were hurting. Workers carrying salt sacks paused beneath pasted receipt drawings and argued gently about which alley held the best view of surviving anyway. Piece by piece, her accidental collage became a wordless map of the city's hidden griefs and hopes. Inez had not set out to make public art. She had simply refused to let one loss decide where creation could live. That is the third takeaway buried in her path. When the main plan is gone, lower the scale, not the standard of truth. She never waited to feel rebuilt before beginning again. She let the rebuilding happen inside the repetition of beginning. Late one wind-heavy evening, while she was retaping a warehouse column glowing green under a weak lamp, a messenger climbed the stairs looking for her. The lighthouse keepers had seen her fragments spreading through the neighborhood and wanted the old mural inside the lighthouse restored before winter storms. The mural was famous once, then neglected, then ignored, much like every tender thing in the city that lacked immediate profit. Inez almost refused, because she still felt like the woman whose work had flown away in a gull's beak. Then she remembered how many surfaces had held her up when she had nothing secure left to hold. She spent the first night inside the lighthouse studying salt blisters, rust blooms, mildew shadows, and old pigments fading into chalk. Instead of repainting blindly, she walked the neighborhoods where her fragments remained, gathering the city back in. She photographed repaired curtains, memorial candles, seawall cracks, market hands, and the strange bravery of fluorescent tape fluttering in bad weather. On the mural, she restored not just waves and boats, but evidence that survival has texture, residue, and names. She layered in the widow's balcony plants, the bus driver's stormed glass, the missing glove, and the stair rails burnished by returning hands. The lighthouse wall stopped looking decorative and began looking truthful, which made it luminous in a way fresh paint alone never could. When the commission was finished, people entered expecting nostalgia and left feeling recognized, as if the city had finally seen itself whole. Success arrived quietly but decisively after that, with more restoration work, public commissions, and invitations to teach young artists how to start small and start now. Yet the real transformation was stranger and better than career momentum, because Inez no longer believed her art lived inside any single object. She had learned that tools matter, but devotion matters more, and that a lost notebook can become a doorway if you chase what remains. Her old identity had been neat, private, and fragile enough for one absurd accident to shatter. Her new identity was distributed across habits, surfaces, neighborhoods, and the courage to make meaning before conditions looked perfect. If you are waiting for the ideal notebook, studio, audience, or season, steal a page from Inez and begin with what survives your reach. Use the receipt, the notes app, the napkin, the margin, the whiteboard, the train ticket, because small starts outrun dramatic excuses. Pay attention to your real landscape, especially the unglamorous parts, because truth gives your work roots, and roots survive storms. Leave evidence of your effort where life actually happens, and let repetition build a map back to yourself. The art Inez almost lost became the very thing that led her home, not by returning intact, but by teaching her how to appear everywhere.